Okay, hello everybody. This is Jim Feist and hosting the Proline TV show from Las Vegas. Tom DeMarco is our sponsor, and my co-host, as will be the case all season long, is Greg DePalma. Hi, Greg. Greg,
Hello.
I don't think you've never been to Dom DeMarco's, but it's at
No.
9785 West Charleston here in Las Vegas. Great Italian food. Albert
Can't wait.
Scallion is the owner. You know something about Italian food, right?
Absolutely. My grandfather owned an Italian restaurant in Hoboken, New Jersey.
No kidding.
A few years after coming into the country from Italy. And my mom took it over and sold it and moved to South Florida. And that was the end of that. But yeah, that's we can thank Italian food and my grandfather's Italian restaurant, bar and grill. That's what it was called Al's Bar and Grill in Hoboken, New Jersey, right across the street from Bethlehem Steel. So he had a lot of business back in the day.
Oh, I'd imagine. Well, Dom DeMarco's is a restaurant pretty famous in New York, and Albert Scallion, I don't know exactly the term to use, but he at least bought a franchise to open it up in Las Vegas, and I'm not sure it's a franchise, but I'm just using that term because of lack of anything else. And so it's a New York style pizza, and the food is awesome. Albert's a great guy. The staff is awesome. Everything is good. And for all of you out there, and a lot of you are going to know this, we do a show every Wednesday during the football season, I guess 20 some shows, and we do it at the restaurant. In the off season, we're going to do it like this online, and I'll be having guests on each week, and in some weeks, the two of us will have guests on, and some weeks it'll just be me or Greg. But we're going to go through the summer and try to keep this active and keep everybody informed about what's going on in the world of sports. Now, football is what we focus on. That's what we focus on, especially the NFL. But we're going to look at everything else as well because it's pretty interesting right now. We just came off the Olympics, which is unbelievable. Watching those shows was just incredible. I've never been to that part of Italy. I've been to Italy a number of times, but never there. And it was beautiful. Some great success, some questionable things going on, a lot of injuries, unfortunately. But and then we have the college basketball season and the NBA season. Of course, the NBA is full of controversy again with the load management and the tanking that they're talking about every day, just about every day.
Yeah, last year was load management. This year it's tanking.
Wow. How many is more than half the league tanking, or is it less than half the league?
That's one sport I do not pay any attention to, and I'm glad about that. But that's all I hear. For somebody, the only thing I ever hear coming out of the NBA are negative things. So,
well,
and they want to talk about how great the NBA All-Star ratings were, and baseball does that too. Oh, we had great ratings for the World Series and all that. You know, they try to make it sound like everything's okay when everything's not okay with both baseball and the NBA.
I don't think there's everything okay with anything, but we talk about the NBA. So many people say it's impossible to pick winners in the NBA. I don't think that's true.
Why do they say that?
Because it's very difficult, especially with the load management, not knowing who's playing every game and who's motivated. So it's a little bit. Most of the time, you have teams that are going out there to play, and they're using everybody on their team. Now with this, this load management, you missing the stars a lot of times, and it's hard to. You see a number on the game, say 4, and then you get to the game and there's nobody. Some of the teams that should be 4 or should be even. It's pretty tough. But I'll tell you what, we had a really good season last year. My service, that is, and then there's guys that are on our weekly show that are really experts, like Aaron Renning is incredibly good at the NBA, and we've got other people that are really good at it as well, like Scott Pritchard, and there's others. And so, by the way, the show during the season, we have the best sports bettors in the world at the restaurant during that 20 or 25 weeks that we do the show at the restaurant. So you have to check in on that starting again late August. However, we're talking now about what's going on. And, we have the, what do we got coming up in football right now? We got the
Combine is this week.
The combine, and we got this free agency stuff, and you got the draft, and I mean, there's so much to talk about. Football never goes away, but we can't ignore college hoops. I mean, just last week alone, we had Arizona go to Houston. Houston's at home, very good team, one of the best teams in the country, and Arizona's without two top guys, and Arizona beat them. Then we have Michigan, the number one team in the country, go to a neutral court in Washington, D.C. and play Duke, and Duke beat them. I mean, and now Houston took off on the road to go to Kansas, who's had an up and down season, especially with this one player, Peterson, that doesn't always show up, and I'm not sure what the reasons for that is, but then Kansas beats them. So now Houston has lost 3 in a row. I mean, this is getting down to it now. We're going to get down to the selection committee and who gets in and who doesn't get in. And Greg, you and I talked about it. It's always been the first round of I'm talking about the NCAA because there's other tournaments that will be up and active as well. But it's the NCAA I'm talking about. There's always been the underdog early, bet 17 against 1 and all that stuff. But I don't think that's going to work anymore. It didn't work last year. With the nil in the portal taking all the good players up into the better teams, the bigger teams that can afford to pay them, these middle powers, just don't have enough talent to upset them.
Yeah, and I don't know how long the college basketball can take that. Who knows? Maybe 10 years from now, when college basketball ratings start to take a nosedive, we'll look back and say it all started here, because what made just think about everything that college basketball has done to market the sport. It's always been about Cinderella. I mean, they turned a major sports phrase into their sport, Cinderella. And we had nothing even close to a Cinderella last year. And if that continues, that is going to be a big issue for the sport that they're going to have to figure out a way to rectify it. And I know they have this new idea of implementing this law, this rule that every team can only spend a certain amount of money, whatever it is, $20 million per sports budget. And you have to divvy it up among all sports under your umbrella. But I don't know how it's being policed. I'm not sure anybody know how it's being policed. So I still think, unfortunately, we're a few years away from figuring all this out, and college basketball may be the one sport that I think it could hurt the most if we don't have another Cinderella this season.
Now, the same rules apply to college football as well, and it made possible a team that would never be considered a football power, Indiana, ending up winning the Natty. So, I mean, it didn't seem to hurt. I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, it seems like we're heading in that direction, but then your bottom, like we've got 68 teams going to the NCAA. Probably only 20 of them have the chance to win the whole thing.
Yeah, I think the differences in football and basketball are that in football, it was really bad in a way because the parity just wasn't there. It was the same old. It was Alabama dynasty, Georgia dynasty. Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see the same teams in the championship and the final in their silly little 14-team playoff deal. That was getting old and boring. And so that part of the transfer portal era has worked. We now have parity. We now have teams that is long. And again, we're only talking about teams from power conferences, of course. But any team now in a power conference, if they've got the money and they've got to get the coaching, and some talent. It's not just about money. You got to get the right players and the right coaches. It's not that easy. Just look at Texas Tech. I mean, Texas Tech had a lot of money, just as much money as anybody, but it could only take them so far. They dominated the Big 12, but once they went out there and tried to play with the big boys, we saw what happened in the matchup against Oregon. So it's still not that easy, but I think it's good for parity. Now, as far as basketball, the good part is that we talked about this last week, is that I don't think that we could say in the last 5, 10, 15 years, or maybe ever, that there were 16 teams we could look at going into the tournament that we think could win the national championship. And so I think that's a good thing. I think that once we get past the first week, the second week should be fantastic. The problem is everybody loves the first week. And you know it more than anybody being in Vegas, how much they pack those casinos, those sports books, Thursday, Friday, especially, and of course, Saturday, Sunday, betting from day to night on all sorts of upsets. And also, that's the thing that really, unfortunately, might kill college basketball come tournament time. But everything else, I think, is a good thing.
Would it? I mean, I don't remember back far enough back to the days of Hoosiers, and that was every team in the country, I guess, was in one division. And Hoosiers was a very small school in Indiana, and they ended up winning the Indiana thing. Do we have to split again the top teams from the middle teams so that the middle teams can actually win a championship? I mean, because if they can't have a chance, does that make the NIT more powerful than it used to be, that it is now? Because some of these teams should go there instead of actually playing against the big guys.
I think what they're talking about, that's why I think they're talking about adding. No, but and I think most fans don't want to see them add to the tournament, but that's what they are talking about, adding more teams. Because you take a look at the teams that are on the bubble this year in college basketball, and they're not very good. You know, there's about 5 or 10 teams, like even Villanova. We talked about Villanova last week on the show. We talked about how they were like a 6 seed or something like that, and how they had beaten nobody. Their best win was Wisconsin, a decent team. No, North Carolina State, a decent team, but a bubble team. And they had an overtime loss to Connecticut. Well, here is their opportunity to justify that there's everybody's good as the committee or this bracketology people believe they are. They host Connecticut and get hammered. And yet I guarantee you, we look back. Matter of fact, I know that if I have some time, I'll take a look at it. The Athletic, I don't know if you saw that because you get the Athletic too. They had a thing today about, they have it once a week to put out their bracket watch. And taking a look at it, because I haven't had an opportunity. I'm gonna matter of fact, let me move this into the screen here, pop it up, because it's the first time I'm looking at it. I want to see where they put Villanova. So let's see, where do they got Villanova in here? Let me make sure it's big enough. Okay, so let's see. This is their first 4, and here are the regions. So let's see where we see Villanova. All right, don't see them yet. Oh, there they are. See, they're a 7 seed. They basically went from a 6 seed to a 7 seed, and again, they have done nothing. They have beaten one bubble team all year. But because they have a lot of wins in the Big East, that's supposed to mean something. It's the same thing they're doing with like Georgia. I think it's just Georgia. Georgia has done nothing. They've beaten Kentucky, and what? Because they have 18 or 19 wins in the SEC. Oh, let's put them in. So that's the problem that we're having, is as good as the top 16 are, once you get to that last 16, let's say, it just does not compare to years past. So to try to answer your question, the only thing I could say is that would it be better for the fans? Probably, because again, if there's not going to be any Cinderellas, and if these teams are not going to be able to compete, I think it would be better for the fans to have 2 different types of tournaments going on, because these are still competitive teams that are a lot better than these other silly NIT tournaments that we've used to have. So why not make the NIT stronger by playing the teams that have no chance in the NCAA tournament?
Back in the day, the NIT was the tournament. That was the big guy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
until, and that might end up being, again, because you're talking about 16 teams that can win. Well, that makes it 50 teams that can't win. So you basically have no chance to win this tournament, or very little chance to win this tournament. You might be playing in a tournament that you can win. In my opinion, I would rather do that.
See, these are these are 10, this is 12, this is 14, and this is 16. Absolutely, Louisville has the ability, and Michigan State, Gonzaga, even Alabama's talented. St. John's can make the run. This is what I'm talking about. And even Vandy can make the run. That they did get one of their 2 injured players back the other day. So that's and I'm getting to 16, 18, and 20 here. So that shows you the depth. But I think this is going to be great for us because there's going to be value in week 2. Week 1 might really be bad, but you talked about it. Why not? Even though it's not going to be beneficial for upsets and easy type money that way, it just seems like the way to go. Even no matter what the point spread is, just go with the favorites the first week. Doesn't that seem like the way it's going to have to go again this year?
Well, unless the bookmakers, jack the numbers up out of value range, an 18-point favorite now becomes a 24-point favorite. I mean, then you might have to back off. But, from a perspective of what's fair to the teams and what's good for the gambler, I like the fact we get down to the final, let's say the last 20 teams that are in the tournament. I mean, you're going to have some games that are going to be really close. So you're going to be a value better when you're looking for positive EV on a game. Was perfect for me, but for the teams and going to the tournament and having a chance to win or even play close, it might be ugly. But that's the Final Four. Now we have to mention something about the NBA. I mean, there's some good teams out there. Obviously, there's a lot of tanking, and that's an ugly part. And we know that Silver is trying to figure out a way to stop that. And even the load management is a problem. They got to find a way to stop that too. But that's a whole nother sport. But we're going to have a playoff, and those playoff games are usually pretty damn good. So even though the regular season gets messy with all that stuff, when we get to the playoffs, it gets really, really interesting because let's face it, no matter how much problem there is with the NBA, these are some of the best athletes in the world. I mean, these guys could do things like jump over the moon. I mean, they are incredibly talented people. So if they come to play, and that usually happens in the playoffs, it makes for some very good basketball. And I mean, a lot of people are saying, what happens with San Antonio and Wemby, and what's happening with Detroit because they look so good, and then LeBron and his 41 years old, all that mixture. There's a lot of stories out there that are pretty good, and Jokic, who's been an absolute great, and of course, the Thunder, who the champions from last year. There's a lot of great stuff. And now the Harden trade to Cleveland, making Cleveland a little bit stronger, a lot more backup support there. And maybe they're the best team in the East, unless maybe Tatum comes back and makes really Boston boost up a little bit. There are a lot of stories other than the negative part of the NBA. So that's good stuff to follow too. And that's one thing we're going to try to do here on this show. We're going to try to bring everybody up to date once a week with what's out there, what the possibilities are, and maybe give some long shots on like for example, in football, we had a team this year go from 4 wins to the Super Bowl. And they had 4 wins one year, and they end up in the Super Bowl. They didn't win it, and they didn't cover. But who's going to be that team this year? And I have a couple thoughts on it, and I'm sure Greg does as well. And no, Greg, it is not going to be the Jets. And I know you love the Jets. It won't be the Jets.
Well, the only way it would be the Jets is if they found a quarterback, because that's the thing that you have to remember. Everybody has to remember about the Patriots is the reason they were able to go from 4 wins to the Super Bowl were several factors. One, they drafted a young quarterback the year prior, so he had a big year 2. Number 2, they spent over $200 million in free agency contracts during the offseason. So and he did a great job of filling that roster. Again, just like I said with college football, just because you have money doesn't mean you can spend it wisely. They spent it wisely. They hit on just every important free agent move. So it takes skill to do that. And then take a look at the fact that they also added some key players from the draft. So, but the real reason was the top 2 reasons really was the coaching staff was new and much better with Vrabel. And number 2 was the money that they dished out and did a great job in free agency. Now the Jets are going to have a lot of money, and I still believe in the coaching staff, but they don't have a quarterback. So unless somehow they find a quarterback that I'm not thinking about, which they're not, you're right. They're not going to be that team. So what you have to do is we have to take a look at some teams that at least have that. We'd have to start there. We have to start at, do they have a quarterback? And do they have the resources in the offseason to improve their team? And it all starts this week, basically, with the combine. And 3 weeks later, we've got free agency. That first week of free agency is one of the funnest weeks all year for NFL fans.
Explain to everybody what happens at the combine. And of course, we know about free agency, people signing players. I mean, we've seen that. Some teams are good at it and other teams are bad at it. And of course, the draft is the same thing. There's some good people that are good at it and some aren't. But what happens at the combine that's really interesting?
You know, I'm not a combine buff, but what people like, of course, the thing that we zero in on are things like when you're watching college football during the season. One of the points that we talked about recently was the quarterback Chambliss from Mississippi, even though he's going back to school. What we talked about was his size. So the thing that we're all going to be interested in when he comes out next year is what really is his size. And what about everything else? How is his hand? How big are his hands? That's important. Okay, that's one thing people don't get. There are general managers in the NFL that will not draft a quarterback if they don't have big enough hands. And that could be a real good quarterback that you're thinking, oh, that's a good quarterback. And you're going, why didn't my team like that quarterback? And you would never guess it was because hands aren't big enough. And that really works against a quarterback in bad weather situations more than anything. Cold weather, bad weather. So it makes sense. These are the things they're looking at. And the other thing is, the reason it's important is, most of all, I think it helps wide receivers out. Because Dan Shanka, who runs our lads, and did a tremendous job putting that site together. And he's got the draft guide every year. Best draft guide out there right now. That's
ourlads.com. Is that right?
Yes, ourlads.com. Okay. Matter of fact, last year's draft guide, I think this was last year's. Yeah, this is last year's draft guide. And it has over 300 scouting reports on all the players that are going to be coming out. So the next one will be out in April, early April for 2026. And what he always told me, whenever I would go over at this time of year, or actually during the college season, I'd always ask him, I'd say, well, hey, what do you think about this receiver? Where do you think he's going to go? And he would always say, I can't really tell you until I see his 40 time. That comes from a scout. Scout, you can look at receivers in college football every Saturday and they look great and they look awesome. And you're like, man, that guy's going to be a great pro. What does he run? Does he run a 4.6, a 4.5, or does he run a 4.2? And that's the thing we've seen players do lately is they run these incredible 40 times and they wind up getting drafted a lot earlier than they should. And then they come out and then you put the pads on, you go out there, he's in training camp, and all of a sudden you're hearing he can't catch the ball, he can't run routes. And you're like, yeah, but I thought he could run fast. And that's the tricky thing that you have. That's why, it's not an exact science. But these are the things that scouts deal with all the time. They deal with, you have to measure the difference between how fast you are, how big your hands are, offensive linemen, same thing. So it could be about height. There's a lot of little tricky innuendos, intricacies, I should say, that go into every specific position in the NFL that scouts look at the combine. And so what happens is, when the combine's over, I think it's important to look at the research. Look at every site will come out with it. They'll come out with, matter of fact, I'm sure our lads will as well. They'll come out with like a top 10 maybe list of players who did the best at the combine, who really improved their draft stock, and why did they improve their draft stock, and vice versa. Why did they not? What happened? They were supposed to be a first-round draft pick. Now you're saying it's going to be a fourth-round pick just because of how he performed at the combine. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, is the interview. The interviews are so important. It's the one and only time that general managers and head coaches get to sit there in the room for several minutes and talk to these players. And you know how that is, Jim. You can get someone in the room, talk to them for 5 minutes. You can come out of that meeting and then interview and go, holy shit, that fucking guy's an idiot. That guy, I can't take this fucking guy. And another situation where you go, wow, I was thoroughly impressed by him. Man, I was looking at him as a 6th-round pick. Now I think I'm going to take him in the 4th or 3rd round. This guy really knows how to handle himself. I know I can count on this guy. Maybe he's mature. Maybe he's already got a kid. Maybe he's already married. So there's a lot that goes into this.
And, I mean, this is not an exact science. This is just something that they've tried to learn over and over again for decades about testing these players physically and mentally, but it's not an exact science. And you have the players that don't get drafted that do really well. And, of course, you get the players that are drafted, especially drafted high, and they do terrible. So the science doesn't always work.
Tom Brady's the best example.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got the Mr. Irrelevant, Purdy.
Oh,
he's got a job, and nobody thought very highly of him. Yeah. And I'm sure there's people that weren't drafted that have done very well. I don't know the names right now, but I'm sure this happens in every sport, where people are they don't test well, they don't speak well in front of public, and they get nervous. They get nervous when they're tested, physically and mentally, and these are very complicated ways of doing things.
Yeah, the NBA, I think, has it the worst, or their scouts have it the worst, because this is again the problem of the product of the sport that has killed it for the past 25 years or so. These kids are too young, and they come. We just talked about Peterson. I mean, there are more immature players out there than Peterson. And that's what they got to deal with. And
you're talking Peterson with Kansas. You're talking Peterson with Kansas.
Yeah. So you got to deal with these kids. They have very little experience playing college ball. They have very little maturity experience. And you're really just, it's really just you're forecasting. You're saying, all right, I think this kid in 3 or 4 years will be this. And it's a guessing game. And it's so hard for these scouts in the NBA. And that's why, like right now, when I hear, because I don't pay attention to the NBA anymore, I stopped about 5 or 6 years ago. But when I hear players that are playing like, oh, so-and-so is doing well, because I watch college basketball, so I know who the players are. And I hear about these guys in the NBA that are like stars. And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. I don't even remember watching him in college. But the game, again, because maybe the player was very young and he didn't have a great career, and he maybe played 2 years instead of 4, and he was a 2nd-round pick or a late 1st rounder, and they were just, again, guessing. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years later, he becomes the player he would have become had he stayed in school for 4 years. So that's why
he might have played in Europe.
He might have also played in Europe. And if that's the case, then I obviously don't have any idea who they are. But
correct.
Yeah, I really give credit to the NBA scouts, because those guys have it the hardest.
Now, any idea who your team is in the NFL going from 4th to the Super Bowl?
Well, let's. I've
Probably
got.
no one, but we can try to guess.
Yeah, let me pop up. Let's see. Let's pop up the standings. Do I have the futures on the screen right now?
I don't see anything at the moment.
All right, let me pop that on, and then I'll get the standings because right there. Oh, what a surprise! Seattle and the Rams are now considered the favorites at 8-1.
Of course.
So let me see if I can. Let me pop out. Let's see. Here's the NFL standings. Okay, so let's go ahead and find us some value. All right.
Now those things are all very small for me. I can't read those,
Yeah,
but I see them. It's hard to see them. I'm sure it is for
better?
everybody, but a little bit. But you can't have very old eyes to make this work. Although I have good eyes, but they're small.
So do we want to go all the way down to
Dolphins,
4, or do we want to go under 500?
Under 500. Let's go there.
All right. Well, that would be actually, let's draw because those are easy. Let's go 7 wins. So you got the Cowboys, the Dolphins. So let's start there with those teams. See, look at these teams right here, especially. You got the Bengals and the Chiefs. How hard is that going to be to analyze, right? That those two teams can make it, but that we won't do that. That's too easy. Dolphins have a new coach, and they're going to have a new quarterback. So that's going to be a very interesting offseason. They've already shedded salary cap. They've already said goodbye to Tyreek Hill. They said goodbye to Bradley Chubb. And they also, someone else, I also think they let off the books. So they needed to, and they got rid of those guys. Boy, and they ate a lot of money from Tyreek Hill. The owner ate up a lot of money on letting Tyreek Hill go. So, but the Cowboys, I think, would be interesting because we know that they can play offense. They have a quarterback. They have a new defensive coordinator who, by the way, I spoke with our Philadelphia Eagles analyst when I interviewed him for the offseason preview for the Eagles. And what we did was we talked about the coaching situation because the Eagles also had some coaching changes. And he talked about how disappointing it was because the Cowboys went in and took, I think he was a linebacker coach for the Eagles. And there was talk because and I haven't heard anything updated yet regarding the Eagles defensive coordinator. But there was talk that he was going to retire, but he may coach another year. And the thought process was that the linebacker coach, he was a rising star, say, in the coaching ranks with the Eagles, that he was going to take over when the defensive coordinator retired. But because there was no word yet on whether he was going to retire or not, the Cowboys swooped in and said, hey, we'll pay you X amount of dollars. Come here. We'll make you the defensive coordinator. And he was like, all right, I'm not going to wait. And the Cowboys got him now.
Whoa.
So, and the Eagles defensive coordinator might still retire. And if he retires, then the Eagles, that they're going to have to go to plan B instead of plan A. So that's something to follow with the Eagles. But with the Cowboys, they feel they've got a rising star now as a young defensive coordinator, first-time coordinator, though. And we know how important it is that the Cowboys can get a good defense going. So let's start with the Cowboys because
that's interesting. That's interesting from a lot of perspective because if the Eagles do fall, then the Cowboys would definitely be the favorite to win that division. And once you win the division, you're in the playoffs, and then you can become dangerous. That's one of the things that I look for.
Yeah, well, let's see. I'll pop it up on the roster right now for the Cowboys over at Our Lads, who does a great job, the best in the business for the depth charts. So, matter of fact, his name is the new coordinator, Clayton Adams. So he's the new, Christian Parker. He's the new defensive coordinator for the Cowboys coming over from the Eagles. And they are going to have to fix this defense. So the good news about the defense is they'll have a full season with Quinnen Williams. And they have a few other players that are coming back from injury, but including Siobhan Revel. He's a rookie last year who Our Lads believed was right up there as one of the top cornerbacks in the draft. He slid to the third round because of an injury that happened before the draft. Happened last year. It's the last year in college. But he's going to be ready to go. He played last year a little bit, and that could be a really big boost. So, again, this is what we need to look for We need to look for things that, like, players who have tons of talent, who were injured, who people don't know about, who could all of a sudden come out there and be star cornerbacks. And that's what they have in Siobhan Revel. That's how talented the kid is. This kid that they drafted in the second round has got all sorts of pass rush talent. So they have a couple of good guys from the draft. They got Quinnen Williams. So the question is do they have, because they have to have more. They got to add more players on defense, obviously. So that's what we need to follow because they have not had a lot of success in free agency. Jerry Jones has not done a good job with free agency in quite a long time.
As a matter of fact, that it looked like he only spent $54 million in free agency. He was like the bottom of the list or something. I mean, it was like, did I read that right?
No, it might have been, maybe it was guaranteed money. That could have been what it was.
It was very low. He has not done a good, like you said, he's not done a good job in free agency.
Yeah, that's been the biggest problem he's had with free agency is, for whatever reason, instead of giving players the contracts that they deserve, say a year or two, like Micah Parsons, instead of giving him their big deal, we're going to give you now an extension 2 years before you're due, and we're going to sign you up for the next 5 or 6 years, he doesn't do it. He just lets it go to the next year, which is always the worst thing you can do, because then it's only a year out now before you can become a free agent. And then also the player gets upset that he's not been treated fairly, and then you wind up trading him. And that's what they did with Micah Parsons. So, but taking a look at the Cowboys right now, as of today, maybe this is what you saw. As of today, because this was not the case when the offseason began, the Cowboys have the worst cap situation in the NFL. So I'm going to pop that over right now. So let me make this a little bit bigger. So you see on the bottom there, 52, that's in parentheses, means they are $52 million in the red. So that they are, because if you take a look at the best team, the Tennessee Titans have $100 million to spend in free agency. That does not include signing bonuses and things of that nature. That's why that figure, that's why they could spend $200 million, $100 million on bonuses and $100 million in cap space. So that's the difference. That's $150 million difference from the first to the 32nd. And that's why the Cowboys have got to start shedding money somewhere. And it's either going to be through a couple of cuts, or you extend player contracts and you say, okay, I know you got a 3-year deal. We're going to get it. We're going to rip up the contract, and we're going to give you bonuses early, which would push the money to next year or the year after.
Well, there's a reason that the Cowboys, with all Jerry's money and everything, I think it's like 27 years. They've accomplished absolutely nothing in the playoffs. And there's got to be a reason for that, and it's got to be him.
Now let's see if we can look at some other bargains. Now the Saints are a 6-win team. I'm still not sold on Blau. I think he is to get him in the second round. What he did last year on a poor football team was commendable, and it was not shocking. Because what you have to keep in mind about the young kid from New Orleans is he was already 25 or 26. He was a very old rookie. So that's the reason he lasted into the second round. If he was 22 years old, he would have top 15 pick. But NFL teams don't want to be taking a 25, 26-year-old rookie, because in 3 or 4 years, he's going to be 30 years old when you have to give him his first contract. But do the Saints have enough talent around them? I think that's a stretch. So Browns also need a quarterback. We know that.
Browns need everything. That's normal for them.
Commanders might be interesting because they already have a quarterback. They've got a really good quarterback who had injuries in his second season, in Jaden Daniels, who they went to a championship game as a rookie. So now you go from 5 wins, you get a last place type schedule. Giants will have the last place schedule, as you can see right there. And the Giants are another interesting team because they've got themselves a new head coach with a Super Bowl pedigree,
and a new
young quarterback. They have one of the better young receivers in football and Neighbors coming back from injury. The Scadaboo had a really good rookie season before his injury at running back. They're loaded at the pass rush department, including their first round draft pick, who was okay as a rookie. He could be a lot better. So the Giants are also a very interesting team, but they need Jackson Dart to take the type of step that we saw from the Patriots May last year. But that could be a target right there. The Giants.
I like them. I worry about Jackson Dart's propensity for getting himself hurt and always being in the blue tent.
Yes.
That's going. If he gets the concussion repeatedly, he's going to be sitting out a lot of time, and then you're going to depend on who's behind him.
Let's see where the money is. The Giants, they have about $5 million, which means they're okay. They're probably not going to be able to land any super players, but you could be rest assured they will add some players from the Ravens. He'll bring some of those Raven players with him. A couple of free agents there, but they can't spend freely like some of the top teams. So that's unfortunate. So they're not exactly where the Patriots were last year, where they could spend a lot of money. So, maybe the Giants could be a playoff team, but I think we'd be asking way too much, especially now that the NFC has become the top conference in football.
What do you think of the Falcons?
Falcons are up here with 8 wins.
I mean, I like the addition. I like their coach addition that they got. I'm a big fan of Stefanski. When you're with Cleveland, you're always having your hands tied behind your back, but I think he's a pretty good coach.
Yeah, the looking at Atlanta offensively, they have a star receiver in London. They have a strong offensive line. They got to make a decision on Kyle Pitts, but he is a very talented tight end. And of course, Bijan Robinson may be the best running back in the NFL. And then the question, though, with Penix is going to be his health, obviously, and when he's going to be available. And right now, nobody knows. Nobody knows if he'll be available week 1. What if he's not available until really late into the offseason, the preseason?
What was his injury?
I think it was. I think it was. I know he had ACLs before. I think it might have been another one. Let me see what it was. I think that was what it was. Let me double check here.
It wasn't Achilles, because that'll put you out for sometimes 2 years.
Let's see what it was. Yeah, it was another ACL tear.
Okay.
And again, remember, he had, I think that's his third. Yeah.
Oh boy.
This is his third ACL injury. And keep in mind, these are the things that are talked about around the draft that people forget in these situations. Like they go, oh, wow, look at Michael Penix. That's amazing and all that kind of stuff. And they forget that the reason why some teams stayed away from him and thought that he wasn't going to be drafted until late in the first or the second was the injury situation. They don't want to draft a quarterback with 2 ACL injuries. And so the Falcons surprised everybody, not just because of the fact that they had just given Kirk Cousins all that money, but because he wasn't supposed to go that high in the draft. And everybody then went, look, what a genius move. Turns out it was a genius move. Well, you know what happened to the general manager who drafted him? He got fired.
Is Cousins absolutely gone?
Yes. Yep. He is not going to come back because of the fact that he wants to play somewhere else that he can start. And he's also going to command a decent amount of money. So if you're thinking about Kirk Cousins in the NFL,
well, Atlanta's already paid him, right?
I don't know what his I don't know what his contract situation is.
And if Penix is hurt and Atlanta's already paid him, why does he stay with Atlanta?
Well, we got to have a new contract. So, and like I said, it's not that he has a contract. Let's take a look at where what it looks like. Let's see where he's on here. He should be on the board here. Where are the Falcons? Here they are. All right. Let's take a look at their players. There's Kirk Cousins. Let's see what his contract looks like. Okay. Kirk Cousins.
Is this what site is this? Our Lads?
No, this site here is a site called overthecap.com.
Oh, okay.
So this is a salary cap free agency site. So here you got Kirk Cousins, dead money, 35 mil. And see what this means here, dead money and cap savings is this is how much. See, they're not going to make any savings if they cut them. And they would have to spend 35 million. Basically, they'd have to give that up. The owner would be losing $35 million of his own money, and he gets nothing for it just to let him go. And that also, now let's just say he was here on the 2027 deal. Well, this would be a lot better, but this is the whole reason he's never going to get here. That's why they do this. But let's just say it was available. Then they would save $78 million by cutting him, and they would only have to give up $12 million, which would be everybody would do that. But the numbers just don't add up. So let's take a look now at the situation for the Falcons. Let's see. Where's their free agency? There it is. All right. Let's just get that again. Free agency. Okay. So here are their players right now. Matter of fact, I was just, So they've already franchise tagged Kyle Pitts. This must have just happened in the last day or two, because I think the tags are available now. They just started. So Pitts is already signed, which means that the Falcons have a certain amount of time where they can negotiate a long-term deal with Pitts. And if they can't agree, then they pay Pitts top dollar tight end money for the position for 1 year. So, so that's these are the only free agents here that are left for the, and I don't see, and again, I recall, I'm just going through this. There's no notable, top players that they have to worry about re-signing. So that's good news. They're going to lose their second running back though, Tyler Algier. So he's going to be one of the top 5 or 6 free agent running backs. So they are going to lose their number 2 running back because he's going to go somewhere and want to become like more of a vital part of someone else's team. But again, just getting back to Kirk Cousins, the fact of the matter is that, they're going, from what I understand, from what I was told, let me take a look at their depth chart here again. So I don't know why I haven't heard anything about him over the last few days. Oh, here it is. Okay. So apparently they've already done it officially. See, that's what CC means. This is the RLads page. CC means cap casualty. So they have already cut Kirk Cousins officially.
I see. Okay.
So any players down here, which you would look on their depth chart, you don't see him here. The first thing you can do is scroll down here to make sure whether or not he's down in this area.
So he's gone. He's gone.
So he's gone. He is officially gone. They've officially ate that contract, which was $35 million, like I said, and he will go off and sign somewhere else. So that is official. So they're going to have to go and get a veteran quarterback to back up Penix in case Penix can't start early in the season. So that's something to keep in mind. Other 8-win teams, let's see, you've got the Panthers, you've got the Colts, and you got the Bucks. And we all know the Bucks are talented enough. It's just a matter of avoiding a lot of the injuries that killed them last year and making sure you can get Baker Mayfield right too. And that offense, they fired their offensive coordinator. He obviously was in over his head. So they brought in a new guy, and
they had lost Liam Cohen from the previous year. So this guy came in and he wasn't up to snuff.
Yeah, matter of fact, the previous 2 offensive coordinators that came in for 1 year are now NFL head coaches with Jacksonville and Carolina.
Oh,
because Canales was the first guy,
right? And
then Cohen came in to replace him.
So Baker had 2 good offensive coordinators, and then ran into a guy that wasn't.
That's right.
And they had an off season.
Yep.
So, which is one of the topics I want to talk about. Maybe we'll get into it next week. Is offensive and defensive coordinators are not spoken of enough as how important they are. We've seen it. We saw it with Detroit. They lost their offensive and defensive coordinator, and they fell off really badly last year. We saw it with Tampa, same thing.
Eagles.
Eagles, same thing. So we see that, but we don't talk about it. We think the or the head coach is the answer and the end all, for everything. It's not. It's his team. His team is the offensive and defensive coordinator. Sometimes it goes down to more coaches, but we'll talk about that. Like Stefanski with Atlanta is a good head coach. He's got to have a good offensive coordinator, good defensive coordinator, and he has to have a good quarterback. That's just the beginning of it. Then you need your left tackle and you need an edge rusher. There's a lot of things to make, and then you got to stay healthy. And, so it all adds up to that, whether, what you're going to do for the season. So that's what we're going to dig into in depth, because there's going to be a lot of money to be made if we analyze this properly and can make some future tickets going into the off season. A lot of money is made in future tickets when you can get somebody that can go from a 4 or 5, 6 win team league or history, the previous year, and make it all the way into the playoffs, deep into the playoffs, or even the Super Bowl.
What number would you want to start off at, just by looking at these numbers? Because, for instance, I'm already looking at Houston at 20-1 and saying, wait a second, all they got to do is somehow get that quarterback's head straight, and we know they can win a Super Bowl. So,
well, I was very disappointed in that game against the Patriots that he didn't put what's the head coach's name? Oh, yeah, I was very disappointed he didn't use Mills. Yeah, I thought he was actually supporting Stroud more than he was supporting the city of Houston and all the other teams, because Agreed. It was obvious Stroud was not. If he put Mills in, it could not have been any worse, and it could only have been better. And I think he made the wrong decision. He was working for Stroud that day instead of the city of Houston and the rest of the team players on the team. I thought it was very bad coaching, because Stroud, I don't know if Stroud's ever going to be repairable from that. That's something you may never recover from. I don't know. Yeah. He had that one good year, but since then it's been downhill, and this is like a third or fourth year. But the one good year is now being wiped out by a couple of average or bad. So he may not be the answer. He may be the problem.
Yeah, they need a running game. They have to take the pressure off of him. They do not have a running game, and they really need him, because we saw what Sam Darnold could do with a very good defense and a running game. And therefore, I think C.J. Stroud might be able to do that as well. He just needs a running game to help him out. And maybe that's, and maybe another year of learning on the job. The only thing is, we don't really know the locker room. We don't know, is the team, like, would you lose the team? Is CJ Stroud such a big part of that team and the players that they would die for him? And so they would hate it even if you brought in Mills, or is it the opposite? We don't know.
They did die for him.
They did. That's it.
And because as far as I'm concerned, they were a real threat.
Absolutely.
To go all the way. Their defense was so incredible. They would have given every team on the West Coast, the NFC, a very tough time. All they had to do is get there. And Stroud gave them no chance. And so a lot of those players will never get that opportunity again. And I'm sure, I don't think they're happy about that.
Other big numbers, you got the Bengals. We know how good their offense is. The defense, at least you look at their defense, the biggest issue, of course, they're going to be losing Hendrickson. And everybody's wondering whether or not, again, I haven't heard anything. I've been so busy with a lot. That's why I didn't even hear about. I knew something was going on with the Cousins thing, but I hadn't heard it yet. So the whole tag thing with Hendrickson's got to be made soon, because there's talk that they may tag him, and if they do tag him, they're going to trade him. That's all they're doing it for. They're not bringing him back. He's not going to come back to the team. The question is, are they just going to let him go, or are they going to tag him and trade him? So that's something to keep an eye on, because a couple of things with their defense. It did show signs of a little bit of improvement here and there because of personnel. They found a number one corner. in DJ Turner, former second-round pick who had some injuries the first couple of years. He was healthy last year, turned into a really good cornerback. So they found a nice corner. Dax Hill is another young player at corner who's developed nicely, and so is Jalen Daniels. So they've now got 3 quality corners on their team. But they've got to fix their safeties. That's a big priority. And you have to understand, part of the problem with the defense last year is they gave these 2 rookies full time last year, all season long, and they weren't ready. But they're talented, and it was, trial by fire. And that should benefit them next year because they had all that playing time. And hopefully that's exactly what will happen. But then the thing that they need to do when Hendrickson leaves, they've got to find more edge rushers. And that's why there's talk. The big news that is going to happen over the next few weeks, and you're going to hear this a lot, and you're going to know it's coming right out of Las Vegas, is whether or not Max Crosby is going to get traded. And that is going to be a big news deal up until the time either that it is not going to happen officially, like, GM comes out, Crosby comes out, and somebody says, I'm not going anywhere, or he's going to get traded. And a team like the Bengals are going to be one of those teams that has the type of ammunition, draft capital, and cash to make that type of move. So we got to keep an eye on Max Crosby. Just keep it, because this is something to keep in mind. Let's say the Bengals trade for Max Crosby. What do you think those odds drop to from 28-1?
It would be significant.
Significant.
Because, as long as they can secure that Burrow is happy and going to stay, because he's been making a lot of noise. But he says he wants to have a defense. He doesn't want to go out there and have to put up 45 points to have a chance to win.
Yeah,
and he's actually said that.
And that's why I think they might make this move, because they understand that he's a local kid that wants to be there, and they made him happy. They pleased him by giving the big contracts to Chase and Higgins. They said, these guys are important to you. We will sign them and lock them up. And that's what they did. But now they've got to do the same thing on defense. And that's why if you're looking for a really good value pick here, it could be the Bengals. Because if they go ahead and make that deal, you're going to feel really smart that you took 28-1 on February 24th.
Because on offense, you can't stop them. It's just really the only team in the league that moves the ball and score with them is Dallas, and of course Dallas doesn't have much of a defense either. So both teams are kind of set up the same way with very little defense and a ton of offense.
Tampa Bay, you're getting pretty much the same number you got with Seattle last year. You're getting 40-1 on a team that we know has the talent, and it just has to all be put together. And again, we'd have to guess on the offensive coordinator. So that's just, but we're talking 40-1. It's a really big number, and that's a talented team. So if you take a look at their team here, look, Wirfs was banged up all year. Bredesen was also hurt. They had all sorts of offensive line injuries. So if that offensive line stays healthy and the coordinator comes in and he's much better than the other guy, then their offense is going to be just fine. It's up to this defense that they have to kind of fix. And, there are players on the defense. There were some big injuries to the defense. You had Kalijah Cansey was out for most of the year, so they get him back. They had a couple other guys that were banged up. So I think Tampa Bay is a prime candidate to be one of those types of teams. I think they've got the quarterback and they've got talent. There's talent on this team. What do you think about Tampa Bay?
Well, last year I was sold on them last year, and I went down with the ship, but they started off okay. They just never could put it together because of the injuries, and then they just fell off the map, and ended up Carolina ended up getting in the playoffs instead of them. But I would say that they're live. But then again, I have to look at this Atlanta team because I think Atlanta could be greatly improved with a better coach. Except we don't know about the quarterback.
Yeah, I think the reason why Tampa Bay, I think Atlanta could definitely win the division and beat out Tampa Bay, but I think Tampa Bay has a better shot at the Super Bowl than Atlanta. I think Tampa
The
Bay's
problem is if you can't get into the playoffs, which the winner of the division, which is going to be a weak division to begin with, you have to get into the playoffs, and the winner of the division gets in. Nobody else will probably get in.
Well, I think it all depends on that. I think the NFL is volatile enough now, and the NFC, where we've seen Carolina incrementally improve. I don't think that's going to stop. I think they're going to get better. I think Tampa Bay is going to be better next year as long as they're healthier. And I think Atlanta, as long as Penix is healthier, or they got a better coach, I think they're going to be better. So I think the whole division will be better. I don't think they're going to be another division like last year where 8 wins the division.
That's going to make it a lot harder to get in. That's for sure.
It will. And then the other teams that we should probably bring up, if the Vikings can find a quarterback, if Washington can get a defense, if the Steelers, they have a new coach now, they have big questions, and the Colts, we saw how good they were until Daniel Jones got hurt. So these are the other teams that would be logical, long shot future teams that we'd have to investigate.
The Colts probably can't. I mean, I don't think you're going to get Jones back off that Achilles that fast.
Well, they do have another young quarterback in Richardson.
Yes, they do.
So he could play for them
if they don't move him.
And Riley Leonard got an opportunity to play a little bit, not a lot, because Phillip Rivers came in. So yeah, I think as long as Daniel Jones, but you're right, they can't trust Daniel Jones, and he's going to command, you would think, a decent amount of money because teams are so desperate to pay quarterbacks.
Oh yeah. Quarterbacks rule the roost these days, that's for sure. And if you're coming off an Achilles injury, I don't know if he can come back that quick.
Yeah. So and then the Steelers will be interesting with McCarthy, and there's still no word yet about Aaron Rodgers. And I wonder why. I wonder if that's the reason they're 60-1. I wonder if they would be more like 40-1 if Vegas knew that Aaron Rodgers was going to play.
I think so. They would be. I think so. Rodgers, even though he's older, he's still so smart. He knows how to play the game, but he's totally immobile. We saw what happened when Houston played them. He couldn't get out of the way. He has to have a lot of help around him because of he's immobile.
They got to run the football. They got to give him help. They can't just have him go back and pass the football.
Well, McCarthy's a pretty good coach. I mean, not that Tomlin wasn't, but Tomlin went there sort of. I mean, he was happy never to lose, but he wasn't trying to win any Super Bowls there. I mean, it was just a totally different attitude, and their offensive coordinator was a mess. And I was never thrilled with that guy anyway.
Well, that's why I think Steelers could be interesting, because I was talking to my Pittsburgh analyst, Alex Kozora. He had talked about, look, part of the reason that coaching staff, Tomlin down, they're not there anymore, is because they did a bad job of developing young talent. And so you bring in a new staff, and if that new staff can get some of these players coached up, then all of a sudden Pittsburgh, you can see a better product on the field. And so that makes them a very interesting wild card as a long shot at 60-1.
Well, yeah, you got to look at you got the Ravens with a lot of stuff changing there. You got Cleveland's always a mess. Cincinnati's a lot of questionable there. So yeah, you got Pittsburgh sitting there. They could win that division. There's no question about it.
And in Washington's the other team we talked about, and they just have got, look, I think it's easy for us to sit here and say that Jaden Daniels will rebound, and he's also got a new offensive coordinator. So Cliff Kingsbury's gone. So maybe the new coordinator will be a better fit for Jaden Daniels, will maximize his ability, and the offense will have a big year. But the question is their defense, because that's where they're lacking. They have to have more talent on defense. And let me see what their cap situation's like, because I don't think they have a boatload of cash. But I'd have to see. Let's see. Where's Washington? Oh, they do. They are the 5th team with $73 million.
And they have new owners there, so they're probably willing to spend some money.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So, matter of fact, I hear that Brandon Ayuk could end up as the wide receiver with Washington. As long as he's healthy, because Ayuk has a relationship with Jaden Daniels. So if Ayuk comes there, then you throw in what's his name, a receiver, the other kid that they have, McLaurin, and that would be a heck of a 1-2 punch. So
they need that. They need that. Definitely.
But then they got to spend all their money on defense, and then they have to draft well. So that's a wild card team. That's a team again that was in the championship game 2 years ago.
There's a lot of question marks, and we'll pick this up again next week. Of course, we'll be picking up all these pieces going forward. Golf season here. We've got that. We've got baseball's right around the corner. We've got a lot of people, a lot of things to look at there. I'm really focusing in on the Tigers. I really think they have a real good shot to have a really big year this year. So we'll talk about that. Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Really, really. And I've had about 9 out of the last 10 years. I've had real good baseball seasons. So I'm looking forward to that. But then next week I got to get really focused on the NCAA and the NIT and these, because there's some big money to be made in these college games that we're going to have to focus on.
And the tournaments begin next week. So conference tournament play will be for 2 weeks, and then we'll have Selection Sunday. Of course, we'll be doing college and NBA talk with Mark every Thursday at 1:00 on the Playbook ATS podcast. So it's all basketball for the whole month of March on some of those shows. I'll do my Friday night college basketball show, of course, and then we'll be doing some really big tournament preview shows. We'll have a special the Monday before the tournament begins. So we're going to have wall-to-wall basketball, especially college basketball coverage in March. So it should be a lot of fun, and it's looking forward to this being a really exciting season in March for college basketball.
I'm looking forward to doing the show all summer long, along with the other shows that we have planned. And again, this is Greg DePalma. He's our co-host. Knows a lot of stuff about a lot of things. I'm Jim Feist, and the sponsor is Dom DeMarco's, Albert Scalliot, the people out there, and we'll be back in that restaurant in August. So this show all season long through the summer, and we're going to be covering everything like we just did. And this was fun, Greg. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, and I look forward to being your sidekick here until you get back to the restaurant. And then when you get back to and in the meantime, there will be special guests every week, same type of top handicapping experts that you saw at the restaurant. So, and I'm sure that's going to start. I think next week we have, if I have my dates right, I'll try to. Memory-wise, I think next week we have Ken Thompson, and so it'll be Greg and I and Ken Thompson. The week after that, I think we're going to have Brady Cannon, who I think you've worked with Brady in the past, right? Brady's pretty good at Brady's good at a lot of things, sports, but he's a pretty damn good golfer too. But he also analyzes golf well, so I think he's going to be on with us in a couple of weeks. So, and then we might have multiple guests in a week. I don't know. Technically, I don't have to do all that stuff, but Greg does. And so we'll be. Well, April is actually going to be. April is going to be stacked because we've got the Masters week. I'll try to get Jan Stevenson on, and maybe Brady can come back for a segment.
Right.
We'll have the Kentucky Derby later that month because
we got the horse racing. That's right.
Yep.
Right.
Our last show would be the week before that last show of the month would be the week of the Derby. And then we've got the draft. You have a really good horse guy on. Yes, John Hardoon from the Ragas and Sheets is on. Matter of fact, we're going to be doing 2 to 3 Derby prep races on the show on Thursday. So I believe that's going to be at 7, 8 o'clock live. And most of our shows are live. You can check it out. There's, I think it's going to be the Fountain of Youth and the Gotham Stakes. That's coming up this Saturday. We'll preview both of those races on Thursday. We'll have a Derby special show the week before the Derby.
Now that's Proline TV on YouTube, correct?
That is right. Yeah, because this show is being seen on both the Dom DeMarco's YouTube channel and the Proline TV channel.
And I'm going to try to post it up on JimFeist.com as well, just so that a lot of people can get it. We're working on all that.
And then the NFL draft is also in April. So you got the Masters, the Kentucky Derby, and the NFL draft all in April for us to cover. So
which means that we don't sleep in April.
No, if we want to sleep, it'll be May. May and June, not April. April's a big month for sports.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Don DeMarco's 9785 West Charleston here in Las Vegas.